Alrighty, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us, the City of Cupertino and Recology, for this webinar. My name is Nicole and I'm the Environmental Programs Assistant for the City of Cupertino, and I'll be the host for today's webinar. I'm joined today by a couple of panelists who will be speaking. So with the City of Cupertino, I have Ursula Syrova and Victoria Morin. And with our hauler, South Bay Recology, we have John Zarelli, Melinda Harris, and Suzanne Morrison. So just a few housekeeping items. The webinar will be recorded, and sorry about that. So the webinar will be recorded, and if you do have a question, please submit it using the Q&A chat box down below. And alternatively, if you are calling in and do not have access to the chat box, please submit your questions via email to environmental@cupertino.org. We'll be addressing as many questions as we can live, but please know that if we do have a lot of questions, we might not be able to get to all of them, but we'll be providing written answers to all the questions and putting together a document which will be provided to participants post-webinar. So we've got a lot of content to go over today, including our results of our recent waste characterization study, some general sorting practices, best disposal practices for items we've been seeing a lot more of since sheltering in place, along with some updates from Recology. So we'll get right into it, and I'll pass it off to Ursula.
Thank you so much, Nicole. This is very exciting to see so many participants. And as Nicole said, I'm Ursula Syrova. I'm the Environmental Programs Manager here in the City of Cupertino. The outreach of this webinar today is really focused on residential customers, especially during this time as more of us are spending more time at home. So if your family, like mine, is generating maybe some more waste than usual as staying at home, we just wanted to provide some resources and some reminders on how best to deal with all these extra stuff you might be generating and some unusual items that we might be dealing with for the first time. So you're probably familiar with these 3 bins. Maybe your green bin is actually a brown bin, but still we have our organics bin, our recycling bin, and our yard waste bin. And our, garbage bin. So material that goes into the gray cart is going to head directly off to landfill after it's collected. Items that go into the blue recycling cart are going to go off to green waste to be processed. And organics will go off to Recology's organics processing facility and made into compost. But before we launch into more content, we wanted to kick things off with a quick little poll. This is a 3-question poll just to test your knowledge of a couple little concepts. And so we're just going to roll that out right now and talk about the results in a minute. All right, so we have 3 questions. You should be able to scroll through them and answer. One is, what percentage of the garbage you think is organics by weight? Is it okay for moldy food to go into the organics bin? And what would you do with that, the microwave popcorn bag? Even the little kernels that never got popped that are at the bottom. This is great. I see answers rolling in. Oh, this is very exciting.
We'll give it 10 more seconds and then I'll end the poll.
Hopefully you've all been able to find how to do the poll easily enough. Okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead and end the poll there.
Great. Okay, so the answer to the first one, what percent of the garbage is organics by weight? It looks like most people were thinking 30%. The answer is actually 50%. And then the moldy food, yes. Okay, great. We have some great knowledgeable people out there. The moldy food can go in the organics cart. And actually that greasy bag of popcorn could go in your organics cart as well. So it's going to count as food soiled paper, and that can go right into the organics cart. All right, so we will move forward. So if we're thinking about that 50% organics in the yard cart or in the garbage cart, the question might be, how do we know that, right? And the way we know that is because we recently did a waste characterization study that really delved into it. We were looking at our results and kind of giving ourselves like a B plus, but this is sort of a single family view of sorting results. And so this is in that garbage circle for single family homes. You can see that about 52% is green, and that's the organics, the compostable aspect of the garbage. So when I talk about a waste characterization, what am I actually talking about? So we have a slide that shows a little bit of that process. So this was, we hired a company. They went around and did randomized samples of single family waste. They, grabbed carts, dumped out the contents, didn't take the addresses or anything, just took the contents, and then went through this elaborate sorting and weighing procedure and sorted into many different categories, 48 different categories of different types of materials. And what we came up with at the end was these recoverability charts. So we can see that for single family, about, you can look at that garbage column and you can see how much organics there are, how many problem or potentially recoverable materials there are, how much recyclables is ending up in there. So it's a great snapshot of how we're doing as a community with our sorting. And you can see multifamily and single family look a little different. We do awesome at our single family compostable with our yard carts, but we're obviously missing a lot. So if we go to the next slide, you can see, back one. The part that we're especially interested in right now is the green chunks in the trash. This is the organics that could be going over to the yard waste carts. So that's part that we're very interested in right now. And it was very interesting to learn that from the waste characterization study. So we're going to focus quite a bit on that today. So we'll go forward, and we see this is really what we would like to see in a yard waste cart. A lot of yard waste plus some food soiled paper and maybe some food scraps collected in a BPI certified compostable bag. So we actually did lid flips for this purpose. We walked around neighborhoods, opened carts, looked inside, tried to see if there was food scraps in there. Not an exact science. Sometimes we poked around with like a little grabby stick and tried to see what we could. But these are a couple of great examples. And after that material is collected, it is taken off to South Valley Organics, which is a Recology owned facility, and made into the compost that is then provided back to residents at the compost site. And we are opening that this Friday for the first time since the pandemic, so we're excited about that. Okay. So a little bit more about what is going into your bin. Organics that should be going into your bin, could be going into your bin, all sorts of food scraps and food soiled paper. Bones, yes. Seashell, seafood shells, yes. That pizza box, absolutely. Your milk carton, fantastic. Food soiled paper like napkins, paper towels, those are all great to go in the organics bin. There are some tricky materials that should not go in the organics bin, and top of that list, well, I shouldn't say top of the list, but one of my least favorite ones is bioplastics because they're confusing. They say that they're made from maybe plants, maybe they're made from potato starch. They say they're compostable, they say they're biodegradable. It's attractive to want to put them into the organics, but they just don't break down fast enough. I think it was Victoria who said that anything that looks like plastic is going to kind of act like plastic. So even when it's getting to this this commercial scale composting facility. They're just not breaking down in the time that we need them to, and so they're ultimately getting sorted out as trash. So please don't put those in your organics cart. More things that should not go in the organics cart. So one of my favorites is the lettuce in a clamshell. You know, if you don't eat that stuff right away, it starts to go bad, and the temptation might be to just chuck that whole thing into the yard waste cart, but please empty out the contents of those containers. And again, even if it says it's bioplastic, you really need to empty those out. And then also, we don't want paper towels that say you've been using to clean. So maybe you're sterilizing something, you're cleaning something with a paper towel. Don't put that in your organics cart. And pet waste in bags, and we don't want any of that in the organics as well. So we really want food and food soiled paper, and of course your yard waste. Other things that should not go into any cart, we just wanted to touch on really quickly since we have folks here. Anything that's hazardous, so maybe you have leftover chemicals, you have solvents, pesticides, even cleansers that you want to get rid of. None of that should go into the garbage. It's hazardous waste, and we do partner with the county for their HHW drop-off program. And it's a really excellently run program that is by appointment, and you get in and out very quickly to drop off your waste. Unfortunately, they, like many of us, have been sidelined by the pandemic, and we did just hear that they are going to start up again in June. So soon there will be appointments available, and you can make an appointment at hhw.org. They're super friendly. There's a phone number if that's not working for you, but you can choose the date that works for you and a time and a location. They have a permanent location and they have pop-up locations. We do have several environmental days throughout the year. And again, this is going to be pandemic specific, but Recology runs these really great events for us. The next one is scheduled for August 15th. We'll see what happens. But in a normal year, that's a great place to get rid of documents to shred, e-waste, donatable items, even extra C&D material, like construction material from your home. So you'll just have to check back on that and see if that's going to run on August 15th. I hope so. It's a great event. If you have leftover paint, there are locations that will take that back. A lot of the paint stores, some of the hardware stores, they're part of a program called Paint Care. So you might want to check with them first before you take a bunch of paint over there, but they will take back paint that's in the original container, and that original container has to be in fairly good shape, so it can't be rusted out. When it becomes rusty or it's been transferred into other containers, you want to get back to the HHW option. And then meds and sharps, I know, unused medications, expired medications, and sharps, like, diabetics might need. Those are items that are tricky to get rid of, but there is a group called Med Project, and they even have a free mailback option. So if this is something that's a regular part of your life and you want to get a box where you can load all that stuff up and send it back to them, that's available. It's a great program, and they're at medproject.org for all that information. And again, all these resources will be part of what we're going to provide as a follow-up to the webinar.
Thank you so much, Ursula. Before we get into our next speaker, I do want to remind individuals that we will be conducting the Q&A at the very end after all of our speakers. So if you do have a question, please submit it using the Q&A chat box. And if you are calling in and don't have access to the chat box, you can submit your questions via email to environmental@cupertino.org. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Victoria.
Hi, thank you, Nicole, and thank you everyone who carved out time from their day to make it to this webinar. The first thing I want to talk about is the organics and food containers. As many of you know, there has been a great dramatic shift in the food supply chain as we've shifted from eating in restaurants, cafeterias, and schools, and now there's a great demand for food from the grocery stores. And it seems like such a hassle nowadays to go to the grocery store. And so we're turning to restaurants for carryout options. And I just wanted to go over a few of these more common types of takeout containers and which bins they should go into. It is okay to put wax-coated paper into your organics cart. And as we learned earlier, greasy paper is okay too. So this would include things like hot cups, takeout containers, milk cartons, ice cream containers. Those are all okay. I think most of you by now are pretty familiar with recycling, but a lot of our takeout containers are recyclable. Those are going to be rigid plastics and metals. You do want to make sure that they are empty, clean, and dry. We often get asked the question of how clean do they need to be. We recommend that you use a paper towel to wipe off any residual food so that you're not using an excess amount of water and running it under the sink. You can then take the paper towel and put it into your organics cart and then make sure that is clean and dry and put it into your recycle bin. And then if you can't get it clean, we do recommend throwing it out. You don't want to contaminate the recycling stream, so please be aware of that. All of those pesky silverwares do need to go into your trash if they're plastic. And hopefully we don't see any styrofoam takeout containers anymore, but if we do, the styrofoam, all the packing peanuts, all of that kind of thing, that has to go into the trash as well. And as Ursula mentioned before, bioplastics do have to go into your trash bin at this time. Plastic bags. The next thing we're all facing right now is that when we go into our grocery stores, the county health order has prohibited us from bringing our reusable bags into the stores right now. In order to reduce your dependence on single-use plastics, you can put all of your items back into your cart and load those items up into your reusable bags at your car. If it is available, we would recommend asking for paper bags over plastic bags. And then you can use those paper bags for collecting your food scraps in your kitchen and taking them to your organics cart on the curb to be composted. Or if the paper bag is clean and dry, then you can take that paper bag and recycle it. If you do have an abundance of plastic film left over, there are take-back programs that are available, but I'm not positive which ones are going right now. I recommend holding on to it for the time being until more of this is over and shelter in places come to less impact us. So moving on, the packages. I know I'm guilty of getting a lot of more things delivered to my house since before the shelter in place period began. And a lot of these packages are still using styrofoam or packing peanuts, and just a reminder that those things do have to go into your trash. If it is a mixed use item like a padded envelope, that does have to go into the trash. And you want to separate any plastic films, and then you can go and take the cardboard and put that into your recycling bin. Or if you have an abundance of cardboard, you can take it, flatten it, stack it very nicely, and lay it next to your carts for Recology to pick up. And then lastly, personal protective equipment. So PPE, this is one of the biggest shifts that we've been seeing, is an abundance of these things now in the residential sector. Before, many of you may think of them as typically being used in a medical setting, and sometimes they have to dispose of it as hazardous waste. But they're often used in food service and public works offices. They're handled as trash, and they have been for many years now. So we do want to reassure you guys, don't put them in your hazardous waste, don't put them in the recycling bin, please just dispose of them as regular trash. As well as often now we've been seeing people take off their gloves in the parking lot. They get out of the grocery store, they want them off their hands. I recommend making a spot in your car to put your items when you're done using them for the day, and please, please, please don't leave them on the ground. They will end up in our waterways, and we don't want that to happen. So thank you guys. I really appreciate your support in that.
Thank you, Victoria. I don't know about all of you, but I've definitely been seeing a lot more PPE items being littered in the streets. So definitely important to put those in the correct bin in the trash. So last but not least, we have Suzanne Morrison from Recology. So I'll hand it off to you, Suzanne.
Thank you for including us today. We're here to tell you about how we adapted to the COVID-19 and explain the changes due to the pandemic. So Recology, along with medical workers and fire department, is actually deemed an essential service. Can you imagine with you all staying home if we weren't to continue our service like normal? Well, part of our plan included providing the city with daily updates and protecting our employees so that we continue business as normal. We communicated strategies for staying healthy both at work and for our employees at home. Additionally, we provided extra enhanced protective personal equipment for inside and outside the driver vehicle. Out of an abundance of caution, we did ask our field employees who may have customer contact to take social distancing precautionary measures, such as wearing a face mask and gloves. And in-person services were unfortunately suspended, such as Environmental Day, which we all look forward to and is highly successful. So we hope that will occur in August, and we will keep you updated on that, like Ursula mentioned. Also, any community outreach was suspended. In-person bill pay at our customer service center in San Jose was closed to the public, but bill pay and service questions were still being answered through the normal customer service outlets, such as calling our office directly or using our website and logging a contact us email to our website. So service changes during the shelter in place. Effective Monday, April 6th, there was an ordinance from the county telling us that we needed to limit exposure to the drivers, and we were unable to service materials outside of the residents' carts. This was communicated to the city and posted both on Recology and city websites and social media. So, as it was mentioned before, with more people staying home, residents that had an extra trash bag that did not fit inside their cart on their regular day was able to call the office and schedule a free extra pickup for that bag. Any recycling, any extra recycling was asked to be stored and then placed in the recycling cart for the following collection day. We did offer tips on maximizing space in your cart by cutting up the boxes and saving room in your trash cart. As it was mentioned before, putting all those food scraps into the organics cart, such as the takeout containers and all that was mentioned previously. Residents did have to suspend the pickup of batteries and oil. And we did ask that those be stored until services resumed. Well, the time has come and we have resumed the service. And also to assist our drivers, additional safety measures were minimized to minimize contact for our drivers by touching the carts. And we did coin a new phrase called social cart distancing. So we do like to have 2 feet between the carts. On-call bulky items, unfortunately, those were also suspended, but we're back in business. So give us a call if you need those scheduled. We did ask residents to either store them or we're encouraged to use, put the best and highest use in order by donating them. As far as significant changes to the waste stream, we've seen an increase in residential trash, recycling, and organics, with a significant decrease on all commercial waste streams, indicating more people are staying home, doing yard work, and cooking. As far as our commercial services, that's probably the biggest impact. As an example, Main Street, Cupertino is comprised mostly of restaurants. The 25-yard organics compactor went from 7 loads in March to 2 loads in April, while grocery stores such as 99 Ranch have pretty much remained the same. Cupertino's largest tech company and biggest waste stream generators have seen volumes decrease significantly. And there's been no changes at any of our facilities that receive materials from others from us other than requiring our drivers to wear the required PPE. And to the best of our knowledge, the processing facilities have been able to move materials during this time. And it is hard to predict what the future impacts will be going forward. Please know we're in this together. Recology employee owners will continue to work together like we have over the past 100 years to provide vital resource recovery services to you and your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. We definitely appreciate all of your work along with all of the drivers in continuing to operate during this time to serve all of our Cupertino residents and businesses. So now I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Ursula to go over some last comments, and then we'll move right into our Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole and Suzanne. I love that drawing on the driveway with the chalk. That's just, it was great. Oh yeah, so we are, after this webinar, we will send out a list of resources to all the participants. We anticipate that'll be within a week. We want to make sure we have a nice group of items put together for you. We have a new sorting guide. We have a lot of great links to all those places to get rid of things that I talked about. So we want to just provide you with all the resources you need to dispose of what you have as you're there at home. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about, this is a special year for Cupertino. We are embarking on negotiating a new agreement with Recology. And so as part of that process, we want to get feedback from our community about their experience and their how they feel about the different services that are available through the hauling agreement. So there is actually going to be a randomized survey, and if you are one of the lucky 400 people in Cupertino who are contacted for that, we really appreciate your responses. I know answering a survey isn't everyone's idea of a great, fantastic way to spend a few minutes, but we really appreciate that, that feedback that we can get. And then we are also going to make feedback opportunities available to anyone who wants to provide them. So even if you're not one of the lucky 400 of the official residential survey, we will make other avenues available to you. So we'll, as that becomes available, we will make that known to the community so that you have an opportunity to tell us your thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ursula. So we'll go ahead and get right into our Q&A. Not surprisingly, we do have a lot of questions. So let's go ahead and get started. So Sharon Zucaro asked, for bulk yard waste, is there a place where a gardener can drop off if it's too much to fit in several bins? What's the best recommended way to handle bulk yard waste? I don't think I'll hand that over to Recology. John Zarelli, are you available to answer?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
A resident can use their on-call collection for a bulky yard waste pickup as long as it meets the standards. It's containerized and it does not exceed the maximum limits. The other option is on the environmental days, we do have drop-off for yard waste and organic material.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Okay, next question. Can you throw food scraps directly into the organics bin, or does it have to be in those green bags that were shown in the picture? Ursula, go ahead and hand this over to you.
Well, the latest I heard that the green bags are allowed, but you don't have to. You can throw things directly into your cart. I mean, it's kind of nice if you have some yard waste that you can, kind of cushion it with. Keeps your cart cleaner. So that's the only aspect. It's your personal experience with the food scraps, and if you want to put it in something before going into the cart, but it's perfectly okay to put them in plain as well.
And I know another great option that us on the team have talked about is maybe even wrapping it in newspaper as well, if you've got that. So there are other options as opposed to using those green bags that were shown in the picture. Thanks, Ursula.
I guess you could also put them in, because the milk and juice cartons are allowed in the compost in Cupertino, you could also collect scraps in those or put them in there before you put them in the bin. But yeah, the wrapping in paper is a great option if you have that too.
Okay, so Sharon Zuccaro asked, what about milk cartons with the plastic screw caps that have the plastic ring on it? Are those recyclable trash? John, I'll hand this one over to you.
I'm sorry, which type of container again?
So cartons with the plastic screw caps on the top.
Those are recyclable.
Thank you.
Do we have to pull off the plastic screw top first though before? Well, yeah.
Are we talking milk cartons?
Yeah, milk cartons that have that little plastic
Extra.
screw top, you know, not like the ones I grew up with where you
Yeah.
just unfolded it, right? But,
Right. Those would not go in the recycle. They can go in the compost, and then the plastic would get screened out at some point.
okay, so you're saying we don't even have to really rip out that little spout if we don't want to?
We would prefer it that it's removed, but it's not mandatory.
Okay. So for an A at composting, you would pull out the little spout. For a B, maybe leave it on. Okay. It's nice to know it will get screened out eventually.
Okay, next question. Eileen Fujikawa asks, should old raggy clothes go into the trash or compost?
That's a good one, a common one. You know, I guess theoretically, if something were completely pure, 100%, you know, cotton, maybe that would be one discussion, but clothes in general, definitely in the garbage. I mean, if they're donated, well, she already specified they weren't donatable condition, but yeah, if it's gotten to that point, they are going to go in the trash in Cupertino.
Thank you, Ursula. Aboli Renata asked, why aren't padded envelopes not recyclable?
The padded envelopes we were talking about in the slide are the kind that are paper with the plastic bubble wrap lining. And that, whenever you have two materials like that smushed together, it immediately makes them problematic for recycling. So it's like the plastic is contaminating the paper and the paper is contaminating the plastic, and there's really no way to separate it. So that's why we advise those to go in the trash. I have seen some padded envelopes that are padded actually with shredded, looks like shredded newspaper almost. And so if it really is 100% paper like that, that would be a different story. That could go in the recycling. But those ones with the plastic, not so much.
Thank you, Ursula. Okay, so Samuel Feldman asked, what percentage of plastic recycling goes to landfill? It's a really great question, Ursula or John. Do either of you have an answer for that?
So that's recycling that ends up in the garbage, or overall of all recycling, how much of it gets
I think
thrown away?
overall, it's asking what percentage goes to the landfill.
Well, our waste characterization kind of answered that. You know, in Cupertino, like we talked about, if it's ending up in the garbage, it's going directly to the landfill and doesn't have a chance to get sorted out. And our single family home waste characterization showed about 5% of the garbage was potentially recyclable. But in terms of overall, yeah, that's sort of a different calculation. I hadn't quite thought of it that exact way, so that might be a good one to put in the follow-up questions and answers. Yeah. Unless Recology has something they want to jump in with.
No, I agree. There's too many, I guess, variables for that question to really answer it. So
Yeah, we tend to think of it by cart, right? So in general in Cupertino, we do a great job of getting the recyclables out of the garbage and into the recycling cart. Actually, more than enough is ending up in the recycling cart. So the recycling cart has a fair amount of contamination in it, things that shouldn't have gone there. But in general, we're very good at getting anything potentially recyclable out of the garbage. But we haven't looked at it quite through the lens of overall in Cupertino how much of the overall recycling would be going into garbage. So we can try and slice the pie that way, I guess. Get back to you.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, so next question, Ashley Robinson asked, I live in an apartment complex and we only have small household-sized compost bins in our waste area, so they fill up quickly. How can we get more of those or larger bins? John, would you like to take this one?
Customers have the option as far as organic cart container of 32, 64, and 96.
Okay, my first thought was if you're in a multifamily and your organics bins are overflowing, then that is like a big hurrah for your multifamily. That's fantastic participation. So I'm very glad to hear that.
If it's a single, that's for a single family. If you're part of a multifamily complex, then it would need to be arranged with a property manager or owner.
Yeah, I would say definitely reach out to your property manager, or the city can possibly assist with that if you're not sure quite how to go about that. Or, yeah, and the property manager would be the one to contact Recology, and we can all work together to figure out what's an appropriate size container for that situation. And then I did also get a reminder to just remind everyone to keep your bin lids closed. That really helps with protecting the recycling from getting wet, not so much on a scorching day like today, but in the rainy season, rain can really contaminate the paper in the recycling by making it wet, and then wet leads to mold, and then, you know, and then that leads to problems. So just keep those bin lids shut wherever you are.
Okay, thank you both. So Stephen Farber asked, where should tape used to seal delivered packages go? Do we need to remove the tape from the boxes before we put them into the recycling bin? What's the preferred best practice there? John,
We're talking about packing tape that comes on boxes. The tape should go in the trash and removed.
If there's a little bit of tape on a box, though,
A little bit of tape is fine. But
Okay.
if you're talking about the long strips, you know, that seal a box, that preferably be removed before it goes in the recycling.
okay. So ideally, pull all that tape off and throw it in.
Correct. Yes.
okay, thank you, John. Poonam Bhatia asked, what should we do with all the brown grocery bags and the plastic bags that we are getting at the grocery stores? Can we donate them for something like for pet programs, or what is kind of the best use, I guess, for our grocery bags, plastic or paper that we're getting? Ursula?
I was thinking what I've been doing at my house is we've been free cycling a lot on and getting rid of things at home, and we bag them up in those grocery bags with the people's names on them. But in general, yeah, I mean, of course, they could be recycled. You could be using them to the paper bags. Paper bags could be recycled, and you could also use them to help collect your food scraps to go into your yard cart. The plastic bags can be, you know, if you can't find a reuse for them, they could be collected into a single bag and tied off and put in the recycling. And John, did you want to add something to that?
No, you've covered it.
Okay. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard of any nonprofits or groups that are looking for bags, but that's a nice idea. I know sometimes the food banks have liked paper bags, but sometimes they're more problematic than just getting new ones for them. So you could always call one of the food banks and ask if that would be helpful.
Okay, Thank you both. Let's see here. So Vicky Utronic asked, are photo pictures recyclable?
I don't think so. John?
No, they're not.
Okay.
Okay, so those would be trash. Okay. A lot of questions about the milk cartons. I think we kind of cleared the air on that one.
Okay.
A lot of people are also asking about coffee cups, how to differentiate between plastic lining versus wax lining.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think basically in modern production times, very few cups are actually lined with wax. I think it's always some sort of plastic. It might be PLA, which is a bio-based plastic, or it might be traditional petroleum-based plastic, but it's very thin. And what we've heard from Recology is that that's acceptable in the compost, at least at this time. So presumably it's getting screened out once the rest of it composts.
Okay, thank you. And someone also asked, Jamie, what happens to all of the yard waste and food scraps? We briefly kind of touched on where they go, but in the presentation, but John, maybe do you want to elaborate which facility they're going to get processed?
Residential organics goes to our South Valley facility in Gilroy, where it's composted. And then the commercial food waste goes to our commercial compost facility in Vernalis, which has additional sorting equipment, since commercial is more contaminated than the residential, and turn it into Omni certified grade compost, which most of it goes to the farmers out in the valley, and what we donate back for the residents in Cupertino for the pickup program.
And John, just a further question on that. So the South Valley, that's open windrows, right? And then does Vernalis have some of the ag bag kind of compost system?
They're both open windrows.
Okay.
Well, they're covered. They're not. They are tarped. So.
To help heat up the.
Yes, correct.
Help heat it up. Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you both. Are CDs to be put in the trash? I want to say yes on that one.
Yeah, they are trash. Years ago, there used to be a place called M Cubed that would take CDs and VHS tapes and audio tapes and all that kind of weird plastic stuff that everyone had so much of, and they folded up just a few years ago, and it was kind of a dark day for all those plastic items that we have. So for now, they're going into the trash.
Okay, thank you. What about food paper, like donut boxes with cellophane windows? Where would we be putting those materials? John or Ursula?
Yeah, John, do we have to pull out the plastic window first?
What type of container?
Like a donut box or a cake box with a cellophane window?
Preferably, yes. Any plastic is not good, so prefer to be pulled out. If it's not, it will still get processed.
So before it goes into the organics cart, ideally
Correct.
Rip out that plastic window. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. So Kelly Walsh asks, I realize this is for Cupertino, but do these same rules apply for other local cities?
Oh, we
That's a
wish.
good question.
That would be so great, but unfortunately we're in this region and every city kind of has its own little dealy bob going. So it's part of the maddening aspect of this, where you move around in your day from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, maybe not so much lately, but in general, and everyone's doing it a little bit differently. So we just encourage people to try and pay attention to whatever local signage has been provided. We spend a lot of time and energy on these signs for this very reason. So pay attention to signs, contact your local jurisdiction to get the most up-to-date info. Yeah.
Thank you, Ursula. Ashley Robinson asked, should we separate the paper and plastic to make shipping envelopes recyclable? So I guess that's kind of similar to the cellophane in the box question. But I guess in referring to maybe those mailers, those paper with the plastic inside.
Yeah, I don't know if you could rip the paper away from the bubble wrap on that. Maybe there's a different kind than what I'm thinking of, but I think it's glued on there pretty well. I mean, if you could cleanly separate them, then maybe, but I'm staring at Suzanne's little box, but I don't know if anyone has anything to add on that. Is there any way to rescue those padded mailers to make them recyclable?
I thought the question was regular envelope that has a cellophane window.
Oh, was that what the question was, Nicole?
It was, I think they're referring to the padded mailers.
Oh, okay.
There's no way to separate that. They're glued together.
But in terms of window envelopes, just since that came up, those are still okay just to put in the recycling.
Yes.
It's a small enough, yeah.
Okay. Kelly Walsh asked, do you know of a resource for used appliances to recycle if they are broken? Ursula or John?
I don't know of a resource that takes them. I know every once in a while in this area there will be a repair cafe that pops up. So, that might be an opportunity to repair an appliance. But if you have something broken, you're trying to donate it. I'm not aware of places that want to accept non-working appliances.
That's correct. I mean, if we pick it up, it does get recycled, but it's not reused.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. So Kathy Mack asked, after I empty a plastic bag of old produce into my organics cart, what should you do with that plastic bag if it still has tiny food bits covering the inside?
What was the first part of the question again?
So after I empty a plastic bag of old produce into my organics cart, should that plastic bag be put into the recycling bin or trash if it has tiny food bits covering the inside?
This might be a good John or Suzanne question, but I'm thinking if it has especially moisture or food residue on the inside, it's probably would rather go in the trash. If it is clean and dry, it's a bread bag or something you can just kind of shake out, then wad it up with the other ones into a bag for recycling. But how much contamination is okay in your plastic bag, John?
Well, we prefer zero contamination.
Okay.
It would be the simple answer.
Okay. Yeah, film plastic is a tricky one. I mean, it really does have to be clean and dry if it's going to have a possible future, and so probably better to err on the side of caution on that one and only try to recycle very clean and dry ones.
Okay, thank you. Anonymous asked, for recycling cardboard boxes, is it okay to leave staples in them or should they be removed?
Preferably removed.
Okay.
Easy enough.
Sometimes those can be those really big staples in the boxes too, so you're going to want to get out some pliers and be careful. Careful out there, don't hurt yourselves.
Aboli Renande asked, old pans and pots, are those trash?
John, can an old pot or pan, if it's, you know, mostly metal with a plastic handle, could that be considered scrap metal and go in the recycling cart, or does it need to go in the trash? I'm getting the nod from Suzanne. Yes, you can put the pots and pans, the metal pots and pans in your recycling cart.
Okay.
I did see the question pop up about glassware. So if we're talking metal pots and pans, that's one thing. If we're talking Pyrex type baking glass, that is not going to be recyclable, right, Suzanne? Right. Totally different kind of glass. I don't know, you can become a glass engineer and explain to us why, but Pyrex is different from like the spaghetti jar, and the spaghetti jar is different from the drinking glass. And the only kind of glass that we want in the recycling are those food, you know, the spaghetti jar, the glass drink jar, the wine bottles, beer bottles, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. So Gail Smith asked, do we only add hard plastics with number 1 or number 2 into the recyclables?
John?
Suzanne?
We recycle number 1 through 7, even if it doesn't have a recycle symbol on it, but you're safer to 1 through 7 plastics are recyclable.
Unless it's foamed plastic, which might have a number 6
Good
sometimes.
Yeah,
if it's
no
foamed and has
styrofoam.
a number 6, the number 6 doesn't make it magically recyclable. If it's foam, it's still trash.
Yeah.
So the numbers, people may know this, but the numbers on those plastics are resin codes. They don't magically mean that it's recyclable in your local community. So again, just refer back to your locally available information. But we're lucky in Cupertino, we're taking a lot of the plastics, almost all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm noticing we only have a couple minutes left. Are there any?
Maybe we'll take one more question. So Tim Choi asked, are there any egregious common items that Cupertino or Recology would like viewers to take note of? We touched a bit on this in the presentation, but maybe good just to touch on it again.
Okay, John, egregious items in the recycling. What do you think?
Egregious items in the recycling?
I can answer some of that.
Okay,
We do find textiles, clothing, and we do sometimes carpet.
Yeah.
Anything hazardous, batteries. But and styrofoam. That's probably the biggest egregious item that is a misconception that it's recyclable when it's not.
Right. And I know we can also easily run out of space in our garbage for those big styrofoam blocks sometimes, but they're still not recyclable.
Piggyback on Suzanne, and probably especially now with the whole COVID-19, is, you know, latex gloves are not plastic. They're trash.
That's a good reminder. So we don't want your latex gloves in the recycling. We don't want them bundled with plastic bags in the recycling. They're just to go in the garbage.
Correct.
Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and end the Q&A. I know there were a lot more questions, so just as a reminder, we will be going through all of the questions and answering them, and we'll be putting together a whole document of all the Q&As, which will be sent to participants post-webinar, along with the recording and all the other resources that Ursula mentioned earlier. So I just want to say on behalf of the City of Cupertino and Recology, I just want to say thank you all again for taking the time out of your day to join us. If you want to reach out, have more questions, I'll be posting up the slide with our contact information along with Recology's.